Hello and welcome to the Large and Unnecessary First Player Token podcast. This is episode 60. My name is Chris.
I'm Euan.
I'm Pawel.
And I'm David.
We've got a full house. Four out of 4.
For big episode 60.
Episode 60. So this is a board games episode, and we are finally going to talk about the thing that I've been promising for the past 3-4 months. About a year. I think I started hyping it about a year ago.
Oh, right. Good.
Yep.
So we're
sex change.
I've had a sex change. I'm now a full man.
All right, that's nice. Did they put your tits on?
No, they took them off.
All right.
They took them off.
Oh, what are those then?
I'm quite touchy about that, Euan.
Oh, sorry.
We're going to talk about this War of Mine.
Aye.
The board game, no the video game.
Oh, because we've already talked about the video game. I think we did.
That's quite a long time ago, yes.
I feel like we did.
This podcast has been going on that long, I have no idea. We've just been dragging this out.
Aye. Take that in, listeners. We don't remember anything.
Right, well, okay, we'll talk about at least a couple of board games, because we've played a few, so we've got some in the bank that we can talk about, but we really want to get this one talked about.
This is the big one.
Let's get this talked about. So, this War of Mine is a Kickstarter project that I've finally got through after some delays. I might go into that later, but there was a few grumps about that.
All right.
But I think it was their first sort of board game project they did, because this was the designers of the actual video game, or some people associated with it that made the board game version.
Right.
So this turned up a couple of weeks ago, and I've now played sort of 2.5 games of it, really, although we'll probably get into this in more detail as well, but the sort of 2 full games we played, I mean, you could argue those weren't full games either. they both ended in horrificness. But just a bit of background anyway. So this War of Mine is it was originally a video game which was sort of loosely set up like around the siege of Sarajevo back in the 90s. So the board game has got the same thing, and actually I have to say that they've really done a really good job of just sort of transporting the video game into a tabletop form. Like, I don't know what you feel about but actually it really feels like the video game when you're playing it.
It feels like a direct translation, and I don't think I've seen anything.
Yeah. Everything you do in the game is in the board game.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose the video game itself, it's not simplistic, but there's not like a massive amount to something like XCOM where they've had to completely streamline it.
Yeah.
You don't need to do that so much with this, but they've gone to a lot of lengths to create certain narrative ideas that turn up in the game, and we'll sort of get into that in the board game, because there's a lot of these. I
mean, like, narrative is basically, that's what the game is.
Yeah.
It's one big narrative, really, because it is really just a storytelling game. Yeah. It's about
teach you the horrors of war.
It's the horrors of war, yeah, and it's about like people trying to survive the horrors of war. So the idea is that you start the game with as 3 sort of random people, which are randomly picked, who are trying to survive in a sort of half-ruined house, basically, during the war, and they have all the difficulties that come with that. So, trying to find food, trying to find water, trying to find, keep their place warm,
keep their spirits up.
I stop becoming miserable, but then they have to go out and, in order to get these things, they have to go outside and scavenge, but because there's a war going on, there's a chance that snipers might shoot them and all these kind of things.
So, do you choose a scenario before you start playing?
Well, that's an interesting question, because there is the sort of main game is just it's just a sort of, I don't know what they call it, the campaign mode they call it, basically, but it's basically just the main game. But there are scenarios, the Kickstarter in particular, and see, I'm really confused about what's actually part of the main game and what isn't. Yeah. But there are scenarios definitely came that I got. So there are other things, like there is one scenario where you find a wounded woman, I think it's called Blood in the Snow.
Okay.
And the idea is that you have to keep her alive until the very end of the game. But I think it's much more of a sort of winter-based thing, and the rules of the game change a bit slightly. It's still the same game, but I think they do add some more extra things in to deal with. So, how does this game work then? It's like there's a sort of journal thing. It's like I was saying, there's supposed to be a narrative, supposed to be storytelling. So there's a journal thing that you play through, and it's kind of like the rule book of the game. But it's kind of interesting the way they've done it, because there isn't really a rule book. Like I say, it's just a journal. It tells you how to set the game up, and there's multiple decks of cards. There are so many. And there are things, like there's event cards, there are visitor cards, there's residence cards, there's exploration cards, there's even a deck called Colours, there's a fate deck, there's a narrative actions deck, there's just loads of them.
Yeah.
And some of these decks, I don't think any of the decks are particularly big, but they all throw something else into the game. It's just a new thing, a new mechanic that gets added into the game. So the game kind of revolves around you just playing through the journal, doing what the journal tells you to do. If the journal tells you to draw specific cards, you do what that card tells you to do. Sometimes there are choices to make. Sometimes you have to go and read a script. Now, that's one of the big things about this game, is the book of scripts. So it's a big book. How many scripts? It's about 2,000 scripts or something in the main book.
Like that, yeah.
Several thousand, yeah.
If you get some of the expansion stuff, that adds in other books of scripts, which are much smaller. They're only maybe, I think there's like Memories from the Past expansion, which adds another maybe 200 scripts in.
Was that what we used in the game there? Because there was a lot of memories stuff, right?
But that, and the thing, the Memories of the Past expansion just adds much more sort of flavour into the game, and it's more about the actual characters themselves that you're playing as. So yeah, you might pick up a card and it might say, you have to do this thing, go and read this script, and you'll go and read the script, and then something will happen. And some of these things are they can be helpful to you, they can be very bad for you. Or they could just be completely neutral. Some of them are just flavour. In fact, a lot of them are.
Yeah.
A lot of them are just telling you, here's something that your character saw. But it doesn't actually affect them in any way. It's just something weird. Like the very first script I think I read in that book of scripts, with something really weird about a guy trying to fish for some scrap or something like that. He was like actually trying to haul some scrap out, and he was just having a great time doing it. And you just stood there watching him, just watching him do this thing, and it's utterly weird. But
but there's going to be a number of scripts with actual instructions in them, and some of them will take you to other scripts, which are usually no longer than a couple sentences or a paragraph. So it almost feels like a choose-your-own-adventure. But I think the main point is, even if you sometimes do get an oddball sort of script that you're not really sure what to think of, majority of them are really what the whole game is about, which is the atmosphere, what your characters go through. And I think quite a lot of these scripts will also be personalized to your actual characters in a way.
Yeah, and some of them are. It depends on what certain things happen. Like the Memories from the Past expansion, like I say, does kind of focus quite heavily on the characters themselves and what the things that, and it's mainly about the things that they remember from their past, and how, or they're remembering how their lives used to be or something like that.
I seem to remember one in a game we played. It was like a school teacher or something like that, and it was really grim. Just remembering about just all these children, they're probably all dead now.
and it is. And you have to say the game's it's not a light-hearted game or anything at all. This is a heavy game when it comes to sort of playing with your emotions a bit, I think. And it's one thing that's actually quite interesting. I'm going to go off on this tangent now, I said I would, but there's a review in Board Game Geek, which I just told you guys about, by a guy from Bosnia and Herzegovina who survived the siege of Sarajevo and played this game and reviewed it. And he said, just going to quote this guy. So this is the username is Nuke, so that's Nuuq. I won't give out his real name actually, but that's his username on here. You can find his review in Board Game Geek. But it says, every game in my collection can be traded at some point, but this is one that will stay forever. I do not have many 10 out of 10 rated games, but this is surely that, a masterpiece. I'll end with this. If you ever thought that war and killing might be or is fun, there are people who do think that apparently, please play this War of mine. You will have fun playing it, but also you will learn how terrible war is. And that sums the game up, really. Yeah. That's the experience that this game is trying to give you. And the video game did that as well. Now, obviously, we're going to have to talk about the mechanics of the game itself. And because this is how the game presents itself to you, this sort of how the horrors of war present itself to you. So you have you start the game with 3 characters, and in the main campaign mode, the idea is that at least one of those characters has to stay alive until the end of the siege, basically, until the ceasefire is called. Now, there are sort of different phases in this journal that will tell you to do various things. So in the morning, you have to draw an event card, but then you move on to a day actions phase. So this is where you can potter about in your house basically, trying to improve it. Maybe let people rest. Set some traps to try and get some catch some rats to eat some food basically. Build new things, all that kind of stuff. Anything that I'm missing there?
Have done. The wee bastards ate all our food. We should have been eating them. Jesus.
Yeah. We need to get to that. Actually.
I think there was a bonus for having a trap when that came out, but yeah, there's certain.
There was an event that came out and it was a day. It was just the morning after.
We were doing well.
We had just salvaged a whole load of vegetables and food and stuff, and we were doing really well. And then the random event that came out was rats, and they had eaten everything, like absolutely everything. And that was our downfall basically. That was the turning point for our game.
Downhill from there.
But if you'd managed to set up a trap before that, then you would have got bonus food out of it because all the rats obviously eating all your food, you're going to catch them in your traps at some point.
They get sluggish.
We had no traps because we had to rebuild our bed.
Well, yeah. There was a lot of unfortunate things happened in that game.
I suppose that's what happens during war. Unfortunate things.
So you'll potter about and you get different. Like each character gets a certain amount of actions depending on how well they're doing. So if their misery is high, they're not going to get as many. If they're fatigued, they're not going to get as many. If they're hungry, if they're ill, if they're wounded. And there's various ways of keeping track of that. There's little tokens that you place on the characters themselves. You can build improvements and stuff in your thing. And then the main part of the game, and I think the part of the game that takes the longest, is the evening part of it. Yeah. So this is when you actually can go out into the city and scavenge for stuff. So you can go out and you can pick a location and you can scavenge for things. And there's a nice little mechanic for doing this, which uses a deck of exploration cards. But so you turn over, when you're exploring a location, you'll turn over a card. And it might give you some sort of choice in it. It might say, you found like a pantry. But you can spend some time to search this pantry. But that means if you spend time, you've got to return some of those exploration cards. So you take your time searching it, basically. But you can also there's a noise level thing in it. You can raise the noise level and roll to see if you get caught, which basically means that you search it quickly, so you don't lose any exploration cards. You're not going to lose any time to explore extra parts of this building, but there's a chance you'll get caught by somebody, and then you might, a fight might break out or something like that. You go and scavenge, and you can basically bring an amount of that stuff back with you, and you might find there's all sorts of weird things in this game, isn't there? Like in terms of the items.
Yeah, but you get like they're roughly broken down into three types. You've got your medical ones, which have a sort of yellow background on them. As well, there are other things on that. You've got like chems are in there, which can be used to make food and things like that. If you've got the right, like a window box or something.
We had the herb, kind of thing.
And you've got red stuff tends to be all weapon. It's pretty much all weaponry based, and then it's like you've got your broken weapons or working weapons, and then weapon parts that you can use to fix weapons and ammo. And you've got green stuff, which is all food, basically. And then you've got the grey ones as well, which are like some of them are components you need for building things, like your mechanical parts. And you get like jewellery, which is useful for trading, and books and stuff like that. So all the kind of stuff that you get in the video game. I mean, you get coffee and cigarettes as well. Is always a classic thing.
Because your characters can have habits and they get miserable if you're told that they have to have a cigarette by a card, then and you have no cigarettes, they'll get miserable.
Well, we had one alcoholic character. We had an alcoholic. We had booze. She got miserable without the booze.
Coffee lover as well, yeah. But we should probably also mention that combat as such, even though we've just mentioned there are weapons, combat is not really a big part of the game. It's essentially just part of storytelling as such.
It is, but you can make it a big part of the game. There is an expansion which makes combat much more strategic. And I'm actually, I've not tried it, but having looked at it, I'm actually wondering if it makes combat a wee bit easier as well, because you can just be more tactical about it.
Gives you more options.
Because it actually gives you a sort of map thing almost to play it out on, and you can take enemies and try and single them out and stuff like that, and sneak up on them and things. So yeah, it's there is an expansion that deals with that, but we haven't used it yet.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool. I think that the spirit of the game is actually highlighting the fact that combat is usually useless or much more complicated than just shooting people. It's a mixture of negotiation and various other things. So in the larger scope of things, combat is just another factor in your survival. You're still going to end up losing some things because you're trying to buy your life when you meet other people who may be desperate, but other than that, they're not just mobs to kill.
Well, I mean, the game does kind of make a point. It doesn't make combat easy, And I mean, you're not heroes in this game. No. Like, you're not heroes. You're just civilians.
Well, for example, you go out on the night raids and stuff like that. I've not actually seen any combat in that situation, but things like you have night raids on your own home, and you have to have someone on guard, and things like that. The options there seem to be you would take wounds, and you can reduce that number of wounds. So it's not about doing damage to the enemy; it's about minimising harm to yourself, which is the whole game, really, and to some extent.
Well, that's the night raids part of it,
so
because there is actual combat in it as well, but which we've not really seen. Me and Dave experienced a bit of it when we played
because we played a game this morning and we were very stealthy, I would say.
Yeah,
and I don't think we encountered anybody on our exploration.
I've yet to.
Whereas when Chris and I played a game, we encountered plenty of people.
We had to talk our way out of some fights.
Yes,
actually.
So quite often there was the option, kind of like you were saying earlier, Pawel, to maybe bargain with these people. But you can attempt to bargain with, you might meet some soldiers or a militia, and it's like, do you want to attempt to bargain with them or plead with them? There's no guarantee that is going to go any better than trying to run away. There's quite often dice rolls.
Yeah, there's dice rolling.
Looking up things in the book to see what the outcome is. And then there may be an actual combat as well. Yeah. But it's not. The combat is difficult. You have to be...
It's difficult, if you're unarmed and you're up against a bunch of soldiers.
That's what makes it
You're
hard.
Unarmed civilians against a bunch of soldiers. And the game is unforgiving.
And it's the premise of the game.
Yeah.
You can't go up against a squad of soldiers.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like your characters are not heroes. They're not... they're not going to Batman their way out of it. So back to the sort of the mechanics thing. So when you do your scavenging stuff, you go out into the city, you can bring some of that stuff back, and then like you say, there's a night raids phase after that. So you see who turns up at your base basically to have a pop at stealing your stuff, and you have to deal with that. Which is why you kind of need to leave somebody on guard. Now the problem with sending people out in the scavenging and also leaving people on guard is that they get tired by doing that. Which is why when we started this game we were like, build a bed, first thing we do, build a bed, which quickly got destroyed by some shells, some random shelling, which was interesting. But
just even that point there is the way how all these different cards and they all sort of interact in that situation. It was based on, if we had two people out raiding the previous night, we would have to destroy a fitting. The only fitting we had at the time in the bed, but it all worked out in this interesting narrative way where the guy that was left behind likes books and he was reading the book.
And he decided to read the book that night.
And in fact, there was something that caused him to take wounds from the shell. So that's we got targeted. And it was all kind of situational, based on what had happened before. So it doesn't always produce the same results, but it can be very random and very devastating.
Because the idea was that we had sent people out scavenging and the soldiers had seen us scavenging, so they went, we'll target that house because that's where they're living. So the house we were living in got shelled, and the poor professor of mathematics that none of us liked, because he was a dead weight basically, was lying reading his book in his bed, and the whole thing got destroyed.
But that only shows how much storytelling there is in this game.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I mean, the mechanics are just there to tell the story. I mean, that's it. I mean, because the next sort of bit of the mechanics is basically just, that's it. You start a new day. You draw some a couple of cards. There's a fate card thing that comes out that kind of has some random things tied into it, and then there's some narrative actions things that you can do. So that's generally something very helpful that you can help you in a future turn. It's something like a card that you keep that'll maybe, reduce the costs of trading or something in the future, something like that. Anyway, but all those mechanics are just there to just tell a story, and the stories that we've told so far have been very, very grim.
I don't think there are any others in this game. That's the point.
Well, we've never, apart from the very first game that I played when I first got it, and I set it up and just kind of played through a bit of it more, and you kind of came in and sort of sat down. You were in and out, sort of just watching what was going on and joining in a little bit. I got to chapter 2, so there's 3 chapters in the game basically. I got to chapter 2 and died horribly. The game that we played, me and Dave played, we didn't even get to chapter 2, did we?
No, we didn't finish the first chapter.
We didn't finish the first chapter.
How many chapters is there?
we all die 3.
Alright.
And the third chapter is basically just, once you get to that point, it's just, you need to just stay alive for a couple of turns, or however long it is after that point. And then the game we played this morning, we got to the start of chapter 2, but, everybody basically either...
gave up.
They just gave up. Everybody was that miserable by that point.
I think misery also means that
at the turn of every chapter, you have some sort of objective that you have to fulfill. And this morning, it was what was it? Nobody could be hungry. We had to have everyone fully.
Everybody's hunger had to be at level 0.
Yeah, that's pretty difficult. So if you don't fulfill that objective, it's not the end of the game, but there's some pretty severe penalties for it usually, and that kind of triggered a sort of chain reaction.
A chain reaction of misery.
Yeah, everyone got exceptionally unhappy, and yeah.
And then you just go through your epilogue paragraphs,
finding out how badly they all died.
Yeah, so and that's the thing, because when these things happen, what's quite interesting about the sort of the misery and the fatigue and the hunger and all that is that when you get to level 4, which is the worst level you can get to, the tokens all have a script number written on them, and there's different script numbers on each of them. I think, well, for most cases, yes, but some of them are the same. But then you turn to that script, and then it asks you which character got to that level, and then it tells you to go to a different script. So you get a very personalised thing. So if somebody's, if Marco, your fireman, who was the fireman who was in our group, who was an amazing character to have.
Yeah.
He could carry a lot of stuff. He got miserable when we decided to read his one first, and you read to this thing and it says, okay, if this is Marco, turn to this page, and you get a personalised thing about Marco, about how. And then slight spoiler warning for the script here, but he basically got so miserable, he just left in the middle of the night.
Yep.
He just got up and left, and he wasn't there in the morning, and he was found dead later, trying to find his family or something like that. And then we moved on to the next person, and that was, the homeless girl. Yeah, she died, found her at the back of the house. And then all that was left was Katia, the reporter. And, yeah. same fate for her. And it was all just caused by high levels of misery. It wasn't hunger, it wasn't hunger, it wasn't illness, it wasn't wounds or anything, it was just everybody was that miserable.
So in a way, like in any other, I suppose, survival game, this is what you have to pay attention to, your meters with various stats, Well, one thing we should probably actually mention is the difference between Marco and the other characters.
Yeah.
Most games like this, most games in general, will attempt to find some sort of balance between different characters, whereas I think this game quite openly admits that some characters will be better and more useful in these conditions than others, yeah?
I mean, you're saying that as if because that's a deliberate thing. It's a very deliberate thing. There's going to be one very good character at the start of the game, one character that's really useful for every group, but the other two characters aren't going to be quite as useful. I mean, they can still do the same stuff in terms of the number of actions and stuff that they get, but you tend to find that their sort of special abilities are a lot less useful. But that's deliberate.
Makes sense. And we should also probably mention here as well that this game is essentially a solo game of sorts.
Oh yeah,
You play it in groups because you just brainstorm about everything, and you just live through all the events together. But it can be just as well played by a single person, although it might actually get a bit too grim if you play it yourself.
I would say that this game is a solo game.
This is a solo game.
Without question.
There is no doubt about that. This is a solo game.
There's not an actual role for each person.
No, you're not playing a character.
You are just doing it cooperatively, and that's by choice.
You're experiencing these stories in a way that I actually found... Well, obviously we knew that the game is grim and brutal, but if you play it with a bunch of friends, then at least you can joke around and bring in some.
Why talk about this stuff, Pawel? Serious?
We kept joking about things, and poor Anton getting shelled when he was reading a book at night.
Yeah, gallows humour.
We should point out that Anton did die because of that.
Yeah, well, he took the shells. And then we were like, well, what are we going to do with him? He's a bit knackered. Well, we'll send him outside to scrabble around for a bit, and then we rolled, and we got.
And then he got shot by a sniper.
A sniper just shot him straight at the threshold of his own house. And you know what? And somewhere deep inside you know that this is actually based on true events.
Yeah.
Any of these things could have happened.
So if you were to experience this game on your own, I think it may have been, I don't know. I'm a little bit shaken actually.
No,
I've taken a quick peek in the book, and I'm not going to spoil what I've seen, but this game warns you that, and in fact, I think there is a mechanic that allows you to sort of some what you call it, parental guidance or whatsoever.
Oh yeah,
you can edit
are you
out
talking
the
about the
heaviest
colours
stuff.
cards?
Yeah.
Okay, so the colours deck. The colours deck's an interesting one because what the colours deck kind of does is kind of randomise scripts for you. So if you're told to draw a card from the colours deck, you draw it, you see what colour it is. It's just basically a colour. It's either like it's black, yellow, blue, red, and green or something like that. And then it tells you to draw another card, and then the bottom of all these cards have all got script numbers of the different colours, and then you read that script. Now, if you draw a red card, you can just choose not to have that colour, because the red scripts tend to be very, very fucking bad. Like, they're very grim.
It gets to you,
and like depict quite horrifying scenes, some of them. And the black ones are something similar as well. Though I don't think they're quite as bad as the red ones, but
it's a way to sort of kind of moderate a bit what the content of the game,
how grim the game's going to be.
For either for your own personal taste or maybe for like younger players as well, potentially.
If you're a parent. To Dead of Winter has a whole thing about watch out for these certain scenarios that might
Dead
come
of
up.
Winter's some of the cards are marked.
Yeah.
And basically you can remove those from the game if you don't want any of those types of things in, because they depict pretty bad things.
Yeah, I mean it's a nice thought, and the game is still, the game is still plenty bleak enough, and there's enough realism in it without those cards, I would say.
Yeah, those are probably just even one layer grimmer than the rest of the game, which is pretty depressing.
Well, we did take one red script, and it was pretty nasty. I seem to remember.
It was.
Not getting too much into these things, but it wasn't pleasant.
Sorry, remind me what script that was actually.
That was that in the hotel. Remember, there was the thing in the hotel with
a mother and two children.
Yes, okay.
Yes,
that was a pretty grim script. Yeah. I mean, I don't think it was. I think there are worse.
Probably
There
scripts.
Sure there are.
Well, I think Pavel's read one of them by accident. So.
See, in most games, when there is some sort of game master or moderator, say RPG, there's going to be topics that even adult people with, I'm going to say, healthy personalities will sort of tiptoe around, because it's no fun to actually delve into some things too deep. Whereas this game obviously has to show it, so it has to allow you to protect yourselves, because I'm shaking up, man.
No, I mean, have you played? You played the video game then?
I have.
You have,
but
right.
I've not enough probably to get to the worst possible
I mean, I think,
things.
to be honest, as much as it's I feel it's a straight transition. If you have played the one, you've kind of played the other, but the scripts do add a big thing into the board game in terms of your immersion of it, because like the stuff we were talking about with these kind of darker stories, they're there in the video game, but like certain things are only kind of hinted at, which is quite cool in its own way, because it leaves you feeling quite shaken by certain encounters as well.
Yeah. And it adds there's a literary element to this that's just not present in the video game. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that can take place in the video game, and there is some biographical. Remember, you can click the bios in the characters and they react to what's going on. But just the fact that it's written allows them to take it to a sort of deeper level than you would be able to in a computer game, I would say.
I'll have to say as well, the scripts they're actually really well written in this as well.
Yeah.
They're like, that's not, even though there's literally thousands of them, they're at a pretty high standard in terms of how they're written, and the content of them and stuff, and sort of imagination that goes into them.
I'd say the whole game is produced at a very high standard.
Yeah.
I was particularly impressed by the graphic design in this game. I don't know if they had involvement with the artists and designers from the computer game itself.
There is a lot of
it's just that, I mean, it doesn't really affect your gameplay in any way, but the quality of I was just so impressed by the layout of all the just on the back of the box, on all the. You have so many cards and things.
It's gonna
if you have a look at those cards that came with the expansions, just visually is like so professionally done.
Which is important, because this is an experience that game.
It's just like a really high standard.
A lot of cards can also be a bit of a warning sign for some games, but they're quite nicely laid out on the board. They're not too cluttered. And the fact that they do all affect each other in these ways makes them, worthwhile. They basically build a game that's more complex than you would normally get.
I think I've looked up the artists of this game, and the two that are listed in Board Game Geek, they're actual board game. Right. Well, one of them in particular is definitely a board game artist. Whether he's done other stuff, I don't know. But he did Neuroshima Hex, Cry Havoc, and I'm not going to try and pronounce her names. Pawel, actually.
Michał Oracz.
And this guy.
Paweł Niziołek.
Of course it is.
I should also add that Niziołek means halfling.
Does it mean halfling?
Yes.
Alright, cool.
Bilbo Baggins.
So he's listed as a graphic designer and board game enthusiast on his profile, so...
But they've done a terrific job.
It's just really good. Yeah, it's an exceptional standard.
Yep. And you kind of care about everybody in the game. I certainly remember from...
The characters are very fleshed out, aren't they? Maybe because they're not over the top, Earth saviors, but just people that are attempting to, survive the realities.
Because I found it quite interesting. You guys were really up for going for the just make noise, see if people. Because I, to be fair, hadn't encountered anyone at any point I've played this even with you before, so it would be interesting to see that. But then I thought back to how I played the video game, and it was just like. You're so wary of even chatting to someone that might look safe.
I remember that.
It was just a constant thing. And if you did, it wasn't like an easy decision to kill somebody in that game. I remember playing it with another, and that was like kind of how I see the board game is that it is quite one that you will sit with other people. And I found that, I did that with the video game, just pass the controller over, but it was more about making mutual decisions and kind of thinking about, right, what do we need to do to keep these people alive? And sometimes when you were in that sort of, you're abstracted from the game, so you can make the pragmatic decisions, right, this needs to happen.
Yeah.
You didn't do it with any kind of joy. You were so reluctant to, actually have to off someone, but if that came down to that.
I remember, the first time I played that video game, the very first sort of, when I first went out scavenging, basically, the first house that I came to was the house of an old couple who had loads of food locked up and stuff, and it was a horrifying thing to just take their food off them. And it was one of these things where well, I've got no choice here. It's it's me or them sort of thing. But then you're standing there looking at this and just go I remember I sat and just stared at the screen for about 5 minutes, just being am I going to do this? Even though, it's just a video game, but then you're sitting there, this game just telling a story about war, and you're sitting there going, how many people have actually done something like this, And that's what this game's trying to make you think about.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. It's really interesting.
It's not your afternoon entertainment, this game.
No.
It makes you think.
It's not a game. It's not a fun game for all the family, I don't think. But yeah, right. So let's sum this up now. Final thoughts on this War of Mine. Be as descriptive as you like. Euan?
Just like a very well designed game that makes you think.
Just makes you
think.
And
invest. Gets you invested in the characters that you've selected, and and also highly really depressing as well.
Yeah. Dave?
Yeah, I think. It's also depressing because it's exceptionally difficult.
Yeah.
There is a sort of game, like a survival game in there, and you can try and play that game, but it's really, really hard, and there's a lot of randomness in the game, and I think some people might find that just a little bit too much. Like they're wanting to play like a survival game, and this wouldn't be my first choice if I wanted to play a board game. Yeah. Survival game necessarily. I think you've got to be into the narrative aspect of it, because there's no, you can leave out the memories of the past, but you're still going to be reading a lot. You're going to be drawing a lot of cards in this game. You're going to be reading a lot of stuff. That's why I think it's better solo personally, is because that stuff is easier when you're on your own.
Yeah.
I don't know. I find it a bit wearing after a while, and this is a long game as well. Yeah, it's not short if you're playing through it.
We're talking hours.
Yeah, I find having to read out the cards can become a bit tiring. Whereas when you're on your own, you can take it at your own pace when you play on your own. That's the thing.
I didn't mention this earlier, but there is a thing in the book that basically says that if you're reading a script or if you're reading something on a card or something like that, if you're the person that's in charge of doing that at that particular point, they encourage you not to actually read it out. and to just paraphrase it. Just read what the card says and then say, look, this is what happened.
Yeah, but then aren't you then kind of losing out a bit of the value?
I think you are,
of
but I
this
think
game?
I'm wondering if
then,
that's kind of like a time-saving attempt.
Yeah, because then I find they're like, okay, you just skip to the conclusion of what it says in the scripts book, and people, you're like, okay, this happens and this happens, and then you lose.
Yeah.
The other players lose the thread of what's going on. It's a bit like when you play multiplayer games with quests and stuff, and people run off and keep accepting the quest, and it's all flashing up on your screen, and you can't see, and you're like, what the heck's going on now?
Yeah,
we're just running around killing things. So, I mean, you can play it with the right people. You could sit down and play it, but I think equally it would, to me, for most people, are going to enjoy it on their own. That's just my opinion. Yeah. So yeah, it's a good game. Not for everyone, I don't think.
No,
you got to be up for drawing cards a lot. There's a lot of card drawing in this game.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, definitely, it's a bit unique.
Yeah, it is unique. Yeah, it's a good way of describing this game. Pawel?
Yeah. Well, exceptional storytelling experience. That would be my main focus. I don't imagine ever actually, getting to a successful conclusion of this game, because it does seem hard. But then again, something in me thinks that's probably what this game is really about, actually, losing. So yeah, I'm happy with that. I can strive for winning solo games, but in this particular one, it's more about experiencing the story. And this game really pulls you in.
Yeah, I would agree with you all there. I mean, I really enjoyed this game. I mean, that's me played it now, like I say, 2.5 times. And I think every time I've played it, it's been a sort of different narrative experience. I mean, it's still ended badly every time, but it's the narrative experience itself is what drives this game, and that's what you're playing it for.
Yeah.
And I think it'll constantly throw surprises at you, this game. I mean, and not all the things that happen to your characters are bad. You do get some good things happening, and those are sort of nice little moments, sort of thing. Sometimes it's like moments of clarity that you're reading people just sitting going, okay, here's what's going on. We had the good one with the firefighter where he basically something really bad had happened, but he had gone, yeah, okay, I need to work harder for everybody else. Mm-hmm. And it made everybody happier for it, including himself. Mm-hmm. So you get all these sort of good little moments like that in it. I'm going to add to something like Dave said, or somebody said, sorry, that this is not really a multiplayer game. This is a solitaire game. Definitely is. I mean, it's advertised as like 1 to 6 players, I think. Mm-hmm. I don't think I would play this with. I mean, we've played it with 4 people. I think that was fine, but I think probably the perfect number for this is, if you're not going to play it on your own, it's probably only 2 or 3. I think. Yeah. I think is probably the best way of doing it. So there's not too much just discussion and argument going on. I think it's something that's you can sort of sit and share the experience with 1 or 2 other people. Is a good thing. I don't know if I like Dave. I don't know if I could play this.
No, but you don't play solo games.
I don't personally really.
I have a lot of people do.
I do
play solo games, and
I'm not sure if I would enjoy it solo.
No, but I think this is a really. I think
that's the thing. I think this is much more a shared experience.
I've played a fair few solo games, and quite often they do have high flavor, shall we say? The attempt to tell stories, and I don't think they're always successful. Not for me, anyway. Whereas, and I was somewhat skeptical about this game, because I find often games that rely on having to read stuff out in order to tell a story don't always work as well as you might think they do. Yeah. Whereas I think this one, just by the sheer volume of it and the way it interacts, different bits interact with each other, they've managed to get there. So I think it does a better job than, say, Robinson Crusoe, for example, which has cards that you draw. It's just event card, and you read them, and like it's a step above that in terms of telling a story. I mean, I know what you're saying. You wouldn't play it on your own. Maybe it's just a personal thing. It's more of a pacing thing for me. The sort of the ability to read something out of the scripts book and take a wee moment to. Also, is there a did they do a soundtrack for this? As part of the Kickstarter?
I don't know, actually. If they did, I didn't get it.
They do quite often these days, but because it's a sort of cheapish.
I don't know if I could deal with that, to be honest.
Yeah, well, because the
having a really-
soundtrack's quite
Well, it's
sober
the
for
soundtrack.
video
It's
games,
all up
so-
there. It's all up there on YouTube.
Just machine
but you
gun
can put it
fire.
on,
You could just take it from there.
yeah.
You just get these odd sort of like low bong kind of.
Yeah, yeah.
It's fairly somber affair.
Okay, so yes, so this War of Mine, I think we can all agree that we all quite enjoy it. I think it's excellent, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think it's really, really well done. It's a really excellent sort of like port, if you will, to board game form from the video game. It's been done really, really well, and it's been surprising, to be honest.
But it feels like with this one they have done something a wee bit more. They've put an emphasis here on you failing. It almost seems, because certainly my memory of the video game is that it's quite difficult to. Well, you could. Well, I mean, won quite a lot of the scenarios, but if you don't like with this one, it seems almost impossible to win so far, and they have actually taunted you. By giving you a thing in the box that it's like, open this if you complete a scenario.
Yeah, if you win the game, you can open this and not before that.
Yeah.
So I don't know what's inside it. I think it might just be some sort of like certificate thing or something like that, like well done.
No, it's probably just going to pile more grimness on top of it.
Probably, it'll be, here's some even worse cards for you to put in the game.
You don't want to let it go of the reins on that.
Okay, right,
Anyway.
we really need to wrap this up now. So, that's this War of Mine, which has been done by a whole bunch of people. What's that, 11-bit studios and so on and so forth. The designers, that's designer, one of the artists is one of the designers as well, just noticed. Pavel?
Just try it.
I'm not trying this.
Oh, man. Okay, it's Michał Oracz and Jakub Wiśniewski.
That's what I was going to say, Wiśniewski.
No, you weren't. It says here that the game is up to 120 minutes. I think it took us a good 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah, that's a lie. 120 minutes, no chance. Unless you die very quickly, which we did.
It could be less.
It could be 120 minutes. But yeah, this game's going to take much longer than that. Especially if you're playing it with more people, because there's going to be more committee meetings.
Yeah, so much so that they provide a special bag for saving your game.
Yeah, you can save this game.
To chuck your game.
I've not even looked into how you actually go about that, but yeah, there is a special bag for saving your game.
And there's also a booklet full of single-use sheets for notes for saving the game.
Is there? I
Yeah,
didn't even notice that there's that much stuff in this box. Okay, right, we really need to move on. So we have got enough time to talk about one more thing. That's taken up a massive chunk of this episode, by the way.
We probably figured that was going to happen.
Yeah. So we played something else this morning. It was a much more just light-hearted game. Even though it's a game about quarantining hospitals. So yeah, this is Quarantine, which is a completely different game from this War of Mine. It's a sort of Euro style almost.
Yeah.
It's more in that Euro market, I would say.
Oh, absolutely. It's sort of, well, it takes on. I remember when you originally got this, you were sort of seeing it as a theme hospital style game, and it does take elements from that. But it is quite a quick playthrough. It's kind of just competitive, but also very randomised. You don't want to take it too seriously.
No.
And essentially what you do is you start with a set of, is it five identical tiles. You have a lobby area and one tile for each. You get 4 types of patient, which are represented different
wards.
Yeah, wards, I suppose. And you get, the patients are yellow, red, green, or blue. So it's
different diseases, perhaps,
or different procedures required. You've got your oncology department's blue, and your dermatology's red.
I'll just say that this isn't actually in the game.
I'm just giving flavour, because it doesn't really have a lot. If we're talking about this War of Mine and going to quarantine, there's really not a lot.
Add a story to Quarantine.
I feel like it's a carryover that we need to do. And there's an odd sort of system with patients coming to your hospital for these different wards. You draw them out of a bag, or the player to your left draws them out of a bag for you.
Yes.
And you call in your patients, and you get 4 actions you can take on your round, and you can intersperse these in any way you like. So you're always going to have 4 patients to draw and 4 actions to take. as part of your patients, apart from the first round, because you're just getting patients out, when you're drawing, the person drawing the cubes for you, they can draw grey cubes out of the bag, which represent diseases, which you then have a choice of playing on another player's hospital. And you put that grey cube on any of their rooms, and it'll shut that down. It's a quarantined room, and it basically just means they have to decontaminate it on their
They
round.
can't use that room.
They can't use
and
it.
It causes problems.
Yeah. And there's like special rooms. You draw that at the start of the game. You'll get like 8 or something. I think it is. We had 8 in ours. Which give you some kind of bonus.
And that's quite an interesting, because there's actually, I think, is it 12 different types of special room, but you draw 8 random ones, and those are the only 8 that are in the game.
Yeah.
Which means that, coming back to this game, playing it again, you can have a different experience with it. It's still the same game, but just slightly different special rules, really.
And you can also buy extra wards for your. There's like a couple of them in the game, so not everybody's going to be able to get everything. There's like 2 of each tile in each of them. So you have different actions you can take. You can admit your patients who will be queuing up in front of your hospital, and they can go into the corresponding coloured wards. You can only admit as many as will go in. So once your wards are full, the queue stops there. You can cure patients, so any patients that are already have been admitted, they're in their wards with their matching colour, you can choose to cure all of one particular colour.
Yeah.
At the start of the game, obviously, you're only going to be able to do one at a time, but you get bonuses like obviously taking additional wards, and there's certain special rooms that give you options to bring in more of a certain type colour of patient. So you can cure quite a few of the same colour at the same time. You can open a tile contract, which is this is how you get these special rooms, and it's an odd system for doing that. So you'll have 2 of that particular tile. You can, when you cure patients, you receive those cubes into your own little sort of bank of that essentially makes your currency. And you choose a combination of those coloured cubes to go on to one of those special tiles, and you place them next to your hospital. But you don't take the tile immediately. It then goes round the table and everybody takes their action. Now, on other people's turns, they can use the same combination that you've put down of coloured cubes to then buy those tiles. So it can get back round to your turn and everybody's bought the tiles. So you kind of want to make it as complicated as possible or as expensive as possible for other players, and you kind of want to have a look, see what cubes are around to sort of work out a way of preventing that happening, basically.
Yeah.
And then once it gets back round to your turn, you can then, if nobody's nabbed them, you can then put that into your hospital. That sort of covers buying room tiles, I guess. You can buy the extra wards as just straight up as an action for 2. Moving patients, now that's something I didn't bother doing at all in the game because I was very lucky as to how the patients came out. But in your queue, you can. Is it one at a time?
You can just move one. You can move for one action. You can move one person to somewhere else in the queue, basically, and that changes the way that you admit people at the hospital because, like you say, you can only admit people into the hospital if you've got room for them. And as soon as you get to a person in the queue that you can't put into a ward, nobody else gets in. So yeah, sort of planning ahead and trying to get the cubes in a certain order can be really useful.
What else you've got? You're taking bonus markers. Not entirely sure. Again, not something I did.
It's so that's just gives you bonus actions in a future turn. So if you've got actions that you don't want to use in your turn, you can actually basically you're banking them for later, which can be really useful.
Yeah, well,
can be really, really useful.
Chris did it in this game. Basically, ended up with 8.
Had to have 8 actions in one turn.
Yeah,
but that meant forfeiting an entire turn, basically.
We were slightly cheating there, though. I just noticed.
Oh, right. Dave's just found a rule that meant Chris couldn't do the thing that he did in the game.
I did it as well.
Oh, well, they both did it.
That's alright, we lost.
Yeah.
I won the game, so it doesn't matter. Without doing half the stuff in the bloody game. So
you're just an honest businessman.
Yeah, your decontamination, removing quarantine markers from your, and renovating, just moving rooms around in your hospital. So, that's all it really is. It's a very simple game. You just
once you get to grips with it, it's very simple. And a lot of the extra stuff that comes in here is through the special rooms that you can buy.
Yeah.
And those do like a variety of things. Some of them let you, like generally when you get rid of grey cubes, for example, They just go into a pile. But if you've got a certain room, is it the lab?
Yeah.
Then you get to keep those grey cubes and you can use them as currency basically to buy other tiles. You get other things like you have a supply room where basically you can put more than one cube in a ward rather than just only having one in each tile.
Yeah.
Various other things. There's a purchasing tile special room that lets you don't have to match the colours of the cubes, just the amounts when you're buying tiles. So yeah, various sort of little powers that change, like I say, because you only have 8 of the 12 in the game, so it'll change from game to game depending what ones you can do. And as I say, the game it's quite simple, it's quite easy, it's not something you're going to take seriously at all. We had a little bit of fun with it.
An hour,
yeah, and there's a little puzzly element, and it's not a sort of like, because a lot of these kind of games can be multiplayer solitaire, but this one really isn't, because people are just constantly screwing you over with those quarantine things.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I just spent the entire game under siege basically because like people were having too much fun just putting quarantine cubes on my thing because I was. To be fair, it did look like I was winning quite easily, but because I had lots of special rooms and they're worth points at the end of the game. But
I mean, like how you put the diseases in as well can be quite interesting because you can kind of shaft people quite badly.
Yeah.
If you get so you get out a grey cube from the bag and you go, right, okay, I'm going to put this on so and so's thing. If they have the way that the tiles work out, if you've got 4 together, each one has at the corner like 1/4 of a nurse's station. So if you get 4 together, you get a full nurse's station, which you will score at the end of the game for. But they also allow disease to spread a lot easier. So if you put in a disease in one bit and there's a nurse's station attached to it, you can then just spread it to another room.
Yeah,
so you just get like a free additional contamination.
And that was an interesting aspect of the game actually, because like you can complete nursery stations, and like I'd completed a couple of them quite early on, but it ended up being a bad thing for me because even though it was worth points at the end of the game, it was making the disease spread constantly, and it was really screwing me over. Pawel, you don't normally play games like this. What did you think of this one?
It was fairly simplistic, yes, in terms of design and mechanics. I think one of the aspects that sort of surprised me was I usually attempt at least to understand what we're striving at, not the mechanics of what to do, but rather how to win. And I don't think many of us actually fully understood the weight of some of the decisions we were making, because in the end it turned out that the patients we cured was actually an important part of the business, which I suppose is what hospitals do. I really like the fact that this game doesn't have any sort of currency tokens, but instead it just clearly says that patients are income. So your patient cubes are also your money cubes. That's very down to earth approach to medicine.
That's quite good game design as well, because it means you're not having to add in some other token or something like that. It's just when you're making a small game like this, it's definitely important to try and streamline all these things and reuse them.
It is a small game. It just uses little tiles that it's little tiles and cubes, and that's basically it. You don't really need much more than that. And it's quick. It's one of the things it does have going for it is that it's quick. I mean, how long did it take us? I mean, and we were doing general bits of faffing about making tea and stuff, but I mean, 45 minutes.
Probably, yeah, maybe not even that. Yeah.
Aye. So yeah, it's a quick game.
Good fun. I have lost, admittedly, but that's because I have no idea how hospitals work. You see, I'm an immigrant. I came to this country to ruin NHS. So I can't make a hospital work.
Well, I think you've already misunderstood one aspect of it. Hospitals aren't run for profit here.
But patients are NHS. Income.
You don't just they're not just there to make money for some fat cat.
See, that's my entire plan ruined now.
Dave, what did you think of it?
Yeah, it's good. It's an elegant little game. It reminded me of playing Waggle Dance a little bit. There's some similarities between just the fact, like, there's not many ways to score points in this game. It's quite like it's like the patients that you've got left over at the end that you haven't spent. So every 2 of those is worth a point.
Nurse station worth a point. Special rooms are worth a point. That's it. That's all you score for.
Clearing your queue.
Yeah.
The queue mechanic is probably the thing that's a bit different about this game. I would say compared to the others. I mean, there's some tile placement going on, but I really liked the strategically ordering my queue so that you could get admit a whole bunch of
Candy Saga sold downloads. Yeah.
Patience all in one go and getting a bit of efficiency that way. Because it's really tight otherwise. You're looking at a special room and you're like saying, how much is this worth to me? Should I take it now? You have to balance buying the special rooms versus buying the regular wards. I mean, probably you did that the best, I would say. You had
somehow managed to win this week.
Yeah,
you had a good balance.
You managed. I mean, there is an element of luck in that. Like the colours can go against you. It can come round to you. Like I had 3 yellow wards, which I just didn't need.
Yeah, and then you start getting like a lot of the same couple of colours, which you couldn't. You got really unlucky with. I think Pawel as well. I was in the Ertz bit, particularly in the first few rounds of the game, really lucky in the way that the way the cubes came out. And yeah, I kind of went for wards based on that. I thought, well, I might as well just get them in and make as much money as possible, because that's how I suddenly decided a hospital's meant to be run.
Just cure the patients, you.
Well,
stop faffing about with special rooms and all that sort of thing and reorganising stuff. Just cure some people.
Try to get grants.
For God's sake, man.
But although it's got all these tiny little efficiency type decisions in it, it didn't feel particularly heavy. I quite like that about it.
Yeah, it's a very light game.
Yeah,
definitely
it wasn't
a very light game.
Like I've been playing Brass recently, and it wasn't like
it
that.
Nothing like that.
Yeah, the way it works is similar in that you make the same sorts of decisions in terms of efficiency, but it's like way more heavyweight. Whereas this, the decisions are there, but you're not getting bogged down.
Yeah,
there's a pleasingly random element to it all.
And just as a sort of finally, because we're going to have to wrap up here, but I mean, I think the thing that this thing has going for it is that the theme of it is different. I mean, because it's not the greatest game ever made, let's be honest. I don't think it's ever going to win any awards, but it's good enough, it's fun and it's enjoyable, but it's the fact that it's got that sort of hospital theme in it, which is something you don't often see in games. I think that's what makes it stand out a bit. And I think this is the kind of game that just kind of flew straight under the radar a bit. Nobody really noticed it.
Yeah.
But I mean, I quite enjoy it. It's a fun little game. Fun little light, quick game to play.
I think it helped us to slightly recover after playing the big depressing thing.
It was a good bit of medicine. Okay, so that's episode 60. We've only got 2 board games in there, but I mean, this War of Mine kind of deserved a long chat about that. I think.
Yeah. Well, you've been hyping it up that long.
Yeah, and I'm glad it's.
We got it out of our system.
Yeah, we got it out of our system, and it's been up to scratch. It's been what I expected, what I wanted out of it. So I'm kind of glad. Okay, we'll give it all our internet stuff. So you can email us. That's firstplayertoken@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, SoundCloud, iTunes, YouTube. We have a website, which is firstplayertoken.com, and we are going to work on that in the next few days. All of our social media stuff I just mentioned there, it's all FIRST player token. The exception being Twitter, which is @1ST player token.
It's once player token.
Thank you,
Ewan. I was
Euan.
falling asleep there.
Yeah, you're gazing off into the distance. We have a Discord, that's discord.me/first player token, FIRST again. My Twitch username is Unnecessary Chris. I am streaming a lot at the moment. I'm streaming a lot, and I just finished the Sexy Brutal the other night there, and it was excellent. Really enjoyed it.
And those are still on YouTube, yeah?
I am. Yes, I keep on porting those across. I've still to put a couple of those videos up, but yeah, I am putting them on the YouTube channel. So basically, every stream I do goes up there now. And we are part of the Podnose Network,
the UK's leading entertainment podcast network. I've nothing more to add.
It leads.
Yeah, it leads. What it leads from the front. And from behind, and from either side, corralling all the other podcast networks in like a sheepdog.
Thank you, Euan. So that's podnose.com. Go there if you want to see a whole bunch of podcasts that aren't just about gaming. They're on a variety of topics.
All sorts of things.
We will be back next week with a video games episodes. I'm sure we'll have a few things to talk about there. Probably Fortnite. But until then, thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.